We've heard Gav say this. He's talking about diversifying expertise.
Totally. I think it'll go a long ways into unlocking that actual like vision of an internet computer and just being able to do more unique and interesting things within the context of a blockchain. I think the plan is to migrate the whole relay chain to like a jam service, and it's like that's a crazy thing.
How about this jam toaster at the Polkadot Palace?
The launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys blasting off with Mr. Jimmy Johnson. He's a software engineer at Chainsafe Systems, and he's taking the lead on their jam implementation. Jimmy, welcome to Space Monkeys.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm very glad when we were talking at, what was it, the after party of the CoinFest?
Yeah.
I was very fascinated to hear that you were actually trying to turn Gavin Wood's technical paper into reality.
Yeah, totally.
You know, looking at it just from my point of view, I kind of can get through the first few paragraphs, even the first few pages, but then there's like new alphabets being introduced.
Oh, I know.
What is going on there? What did Gavin actually create here?
From our perspective, it's quite nice because, so for some context, we've been building clients in Polkadot, or we've been building an alternative client to Polkadot for a couple of years now in Go. And so the current landscape for client development in Polkadot is based off of the parity implementation. That's like the canonical correct solution.
Yeah.
And so with Jam, it's been a bit of a different approach to where it's based off like the paper and math versus a specific code implementation. Like, yeah, lots of symbols, and it's not like a traditional academic paper where it's just like proofs and lemmas and just normal math. It's like normal math and also assigning symbols their own value within the context of Jam, which it does. I mean, there's a whole section on notation just for the reader to be able to know what things even mean of the symbols, which is...
So this paper has like symbols that mean something only in this context.
Yeah.
And Gavin like defines what that symbol means, and you go and you check, and you're like,
Yep,
okay.
Exactly. And a bunch of normal mathematical symbols to go through also,
When we hear the word client, what does this mean?
I don't think we use the term client in Polkadot too, but I just kind of throw the term around.
Yeah.
In Polkadot, we have the host and the runtime. Like basically a client is what you would run if you want to run the software to participate in the network, whether that's as a full node or a block producer validating that piece of code that you need to download and run to make that happen would be what I call the client.
Okay.
And so in Polkadot, there's the runtime, which is where all like the business logic of the chain is. It's compiled down to WASM. And so then it gets passed to us. So we're technically a Polkadot host implementer. So client development might be, I just say that like we're a host implementer.
Yeah, I kind of thought those were the same. Or
to me, they're quite similar. Like I don't get too caught up on the naming of it.
Yeah.
And so we're building out like it's the host in Polkadot is things like consensus, networking, storage, like all these kind of low level things that to build on Polkadot, you shouldn't have to worry about.
Yeah.
But we need to help make it happen so you don't have to worry about it.
But the idea is Parity has a host.
Yeah.
And this is written in a certain language.
Yeah, in Rust.
In Rust. But you're writing a host as well, or you've written a host.
Yes.
You developed a host.
Yes.
In a different language.
Yes, in a different language.
And this is important. Why?
There's a couple reasons.
Sure.
From a technical standpoint and like security standpoint, it really adds robustness to the network. Like we can think back to like Shanghai attacks in Ethereum, where it's say right now there was a bug in Parity's implementation. If they're the only client that exists, like in a bug in like consensus, like if consensus broke on the Parity client, like
sure.
I'm knocking on like it's been running quite stable for quite a long time. Like, But if it was to happen, the network would be out like 100%. There's a bunch of different versions of it, but everyone running a Polkadot node currently is running the same piece of code.
Gotcha.
So if there's a bug in that piece of code, everyone has it, right? And so from a robustness and security standpoint, having a different team implement the same logic, but having their own spin on it and doing it in a different language, it can reduce not only the like amount of errors, but like how they could propagate in the network.
I see.
So say if it's like 50% of the network runs like a Gossamer node, like our implementation, or versus Parodies, and ours crashed. 50% of the network is still up and live because they're running Parodies, and it was just ours that broke versus propagating throughout the whole system.
So it's a redundancy.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think beyond that, I think that there's quite a lot of value to like kind of growing the pie in terms of development resources and like ideas in the space, and just like who's contributing to core development. Like it's that you can have like a very good team that can do great work, of course, like Parody's doing that right now, right? But I think that it's always nicer if you can build, like, have multiple quality teams that have to work together and can brainstorm and just, like, work with people at different layers in the ecosystem, and it just, like, increase collaboration. It, like, the core development level gets maybe overlooked a little bit.
I think we've heard Gav say this. He's talking about diversifying expertise.
Totally. Right? That's been one of my favorite things. Like, that's like the #1 thing he said that resonated with me of like why I'm excited about Jam.
Wow.
Like for diversifying expertise in the ecosystem.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's just quite refreshing from a client developer standpoint.
So this time, I mean, with Gossamer, you're trying to, hopefully this isn't an unkind way of saying it, but you're basically trying to play catch up to the parody client.
That's 100% how I think of it.
Okay, which is important. And you're still working on this, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
We've seen your team come through the Treasury and, you know, for all this funding, which is great. But what's happening here with Jam is that actually we're starting with, I think, what does Gavin want? At least 3 implementations.
Yep.
Right?
At least 3.
Okay. And I think there are over 25
there's
teams.
A lot. Yeah.
Without saying any names, how many of these teams do you think stand a chance? How many do you see have got the stuff?
So I haven't done a deep dive into all of the teams.
Yeah, of course.
There are certainly some where I look at and I'm like, okay, we'll see how this, and like not even like, I don't know them. Like I could be wrong, but it's where like
just impressions.
Yeah, we have a whole team that's been developing and we have a whole company backing us versus like someone that maybe doesn't have all that. And there's like advantages and disadvantages to like, I think you can get quite a lot done if you're a solo developer in your basement doing whatever you want. Like there's a lot of power there.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a little bit of a weeding out as the milestones progress.
Yeah.
Like I think the first milestone comparatively is not all that hard to get to. There's not really networking. There's no consensus. It's just kind of like the state transition function for Jam.
Huh.
But then you go to the second milestone, and now that's grandpa. So like building out finality and consensus and block production and all of like the availability and dispute systems. Wow. It's like the level of complexity jumps quite a lot at that milestone.
Okay.
So I think that's like where we'll see like who's like really being serious about it.
The first milestone still has a prize, right?
Oh yeah.
Still pays out.
Yeah, I think the idea is that it's okay to have teams go to specific milestones and that's what they do. Like not everyone has to build a full production ready system. It's like you can have different teams building to different stages and they get rewarded for doing so. That's like our goal is certainly to like we want to go all the way. Yeah, for sure.
Some of these languages that are being incentivized with the prize here, they're not even performing enough to go past the first milestone, right?
For the first milestone, they might be okay, but there'll be significant challenges down the road for some of these languages. And I imagine that some of these are like fun side projects for people. It's like if it's a programming language, if they're new to functional programming and they want to try building in a functional language, it's like, okay, maybe I can get to the first milestone and I'll get some money for doing this. Like it can be what a fun project to have, right? It's like there can be like, if you're not incentivized just by the money, even if you are, it's like if you're just like a curious developer, it's like, okay, let's try and hit this first milestone. I'll build something and like,
sure.
It's not just even for me. It's like now I'm contributing to an ecosystem. I might get some money for it, and it's scratching my like curiosity itch. Like, what an awesome thing to
and you get to work with amazing developers, right?
Yes,
like, Gav's, there's a couple chat rooms, right?
Oh
open,
yeah,
and
no, it's amazing.
You get to ask
and
questions.
This
right
is the other side. I kind of went to the like teams that maybe like I suspect won't be as serious, but there's the other side of. There's been some amazing questions and conversations happening in these chat rooms that you're referring to, and it's I believe they're fully open, but it's like for whoever is like participating in like either the gray paper or Jam development. It's open resource for people to ask questions and talk. Like I mean, already those chat rooms compared to the chat rooms we have for like current Polkadot is like there's way more conversations going on, and it's really awesome to see just like different people that I maybe didn't know of that are asking questions and are deciding to build a team to do this, or people that I do know, like Gav answering my questions directly about things that I have. It's like, oh, this is a very like, we're all kind of in this together. There's a nice community aspect to it.
So cool.
It's nice. And it's like fun to be a part of, which is cool.
How do you describe Jam to people? What does Jam look like? You know, especially compared to what we have today. Like, why is it so necessary to do all this?
Yeah. The things that I think make it different from today, at least that I focus on, are one, what we've touched on, like kind of the ideals behind it and building it, and like the multiple clients and growing the pie and like that type of thing. But then from like the more technical side, I think of it as mostly just adding more flexibility to what you can do with the system, right? Like if you want to build on Polkadot right now, like pretty much the option is to build a parachain, right? Like you can build on top of parachains, of course, but like if you're going to build directly on the Polkadot network, the option is to build a parachain. You have to do it a very specific way. There's not a whole lot of flexibility in how you connect a parachain to the relay chain. It's like there is a way to do it. You can do whatever you want on the parachain side. With you build whatever parachain you want, right? But like how it connects is quite defined and not super flexible. Like you have to build a parachain. That's what you have to do.
Which comes with a load of expense and
totally
expertise.
Yes. Totally. It's hard to build a blockchain. We can build a bunch of really nice tools and frameworks and and they are very nice, but at the end of the day, you're still building a blockchain, and it's not easy to do. Okay. At least for me, if building, maybe it's easy for Gav. I don't know. He's built a bunch of them, but for like other people, like it's not an easy thing to build, I don't think. And so exactly like you say, there's overhead to it. And so I think for Jam, it just gives a little more, I think quite a good amount more wiggle room, and we'll see how it plays out. But there's a lot more flexibility. Like you want to build a full-fledged blockchain on Jam. I mean, I think the plan is to migrate the whole relay chain to like a Jam service, and it's like that's a crazy thing, but like awesome. But I mean, if we're talking about complexity, that's like pretty high up in terms of what can be built on Jam. But you can also like I know other people have talked about like super like simple apps that you could just put on. Like you could build a counter app, and you can build like just super tailored to your own needs applications. So where it's like, okay, maybe you don't need a full-fledged complex blockchain for your needs. So you can build something else. And what those things are, but like, I don't know, I'll see, you know, like it's a little untested waters, which is exciting.
My understanding is, at least at first, once we get the Jam chain going and we migrate the Polkadot relay chain to this Polkadot service, something, it will still be a few years yet before we get to this kind of general compute platform. Is this your understanding as well?
I'm imagining that like specifically the migration for like Polkadot and like parachain teams, if they want to migrate, it'll be a multi-step kind of long process. Like for moving the whole system to Jam, I think it'll happen in one step probably. But then like exactly like you're saying, to go from that to actually using all of the unlocking Jam's full potential with all the parachains and building all the other services on top, because it's also a different way of developing than if you're building a parachain right now, it looks different than building in Jam. Like you're adhering to different interfaces.
I see.
And so I think there's also just a little bit of like, there'll be new development models for how systems interact with each other, and we'll have to see how that plays out. I'm sure other people who like design Jam have a more concrete idea of what that looks like.
Sure.
But
or maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe not. But I think there'll be like a period where we're figuring out all of these things. And I mean, it's like, I think this is just how it is in every system. Like if you think about smart contracts at the beginning of Ethereum and like early EVM days, like very naive smart contracts, and then you just add sophistication and they make network upgrades to make it cheaper and like whatever it is, and then people get better at, there's like the protocol side of things where they can upgrade the Ethereum blockchain to make the smart contracts better or faster. But then a lot of it happens at the application layer itself, where just time building and tools being developed, people get better at doing what they're doing, you know? And so I think and so now like smart contracts can be quite complex, sophisticated pieces of software. And it takes time to get there. You don't just start there. And I imagine Jam will be the same way.
Gotcha. Any surprises, any hidden beauty that you've uncovered in the Jam paper that come to mind?
So I'm excited about the PVM, honestly. Like that's
okay.
I just think it's quite a.
Glad you brought it up.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if it's a surprise thing, but I really like the idea of having a VM that's based on RISC-V and very general. I think maybe a theme in what I'm going to say is that like some of the things that I'm unsure about, I'm excited about. Like what people will do with the PVM.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but you can do a lot. So I'm very excited to see how that goes.
Okay, I need you to put your teacher's cap on here a little bit, and I want to kind of understand where the PVM fits into the whole stack, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
There's a virtual machine now with Polkadot?
Yes.
Okay.
It's WASM, so WebAssembly. Yeah, so for current Polkadot, what you'll do is you'll write, so this happens on the relay chain and also all the parachains. They'll write their runtime, right? And so the Polkadot runtime is kind of like a layer above what I'm building is a host implementer. And so it's things like accounts, like staking.
Is runtime like a program?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's the relay chain's program, like what's actually running and like stateful on the chain. So it's written in Rust currently. And it gets compiled down to WebAssembly. That's the current Polkadot virtual machine.
Yeah.
And so we, as host implementers, take this compiled WebAssembly and we basically just kind of like plop it into our system and interact with it just as it is. We can interact with it, and there's certain functions that are defined and that we know about, and we define things that it knows about, and us and this little blob of code can interact very nicely. And so it'll be like this in Jam too. And so for all the Jam services, they'll build some like their service with the PVM. Or like a language that compiles to the PVM, which can be quite a lot of languages, which is
But is WASM still going to be around or no?
Not in, I mean, it'll be around, but it's not a core part of Jam.
So the parachains, when they migrate over, they'll be running on the PVM.
I think this is not fully set in stone yet, so I'm not like the authority figure speaking on this.
We're speculating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I think this is something the fellowship is working towards, like figuring out. But from how I understand this migration, I think, and probably I'll say like this should be the goal, that for the parachains, we should try to minimize the effort needed to migrate.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It's like the burden should be on like teams like me, like my team, like to do these migrations and like the core protocol developers.
Look at how slow it is for teams to like implement the new Ledger app.
We can't just be like, okay, guys, rebuild everything you have.
Like
that's not like,
not gonna fly.
No. And I do not think that's at all what will happen. So I think for the migration, I think it'll be very little changes for parachains. And there will be tools or like a service built to kind of wrap the existing relay chain logic. So I'm guessing they'll still be able to compile the WASM, do all their thing. And then that just in turn gets processed by the PVM. So it's like kind of the relay chain, parachain stuff happens over here, then goes over to the Jam PVM world over here.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. So I think they won't have to worry about it unless they choose to later down the road to like unlock some of the benefits of Jam that maybe you don't get in the current system. Then they might have to like do some PVM workings. You're
kind of giving me the impression that like anything could be run on this virtual machine.
Yeah. So the one thing about the PVM that is different than WASM is that, well, one, it's quite simple. It's not a very hard virtual machine, and it's based on RISC-V, which has been around for a long time, and it's a reduced instruction set, which means it's exactly what it sounds like. There's less instructions, and so it's more, not naive, because you can do just as much, but it's just quite simple and bare bones.
Like more general?
Yeah. I would
more
say
open or something?
Yeah, it's less complex.
Okay.
But you can still do everything.
Okay.
Which is nice. Yeah, it's just a very bare bones virtual machine. And so we've built on top of it a little bit for the PVM. It's like an extension of it.
Yeah.
But a nice thing is that there's a lot of tooling and support for RISC-V architectures.
I see.
And so we'll be able to tap it. Like, I imagine this is something we're pushing for, and they've talked about this, like getting all the tooling support that exists for RISC-V and being able to use it for the PVM. So now, like, one thing specifically would be LLVM, which is a specific compiler, but it's very, very heavily used in the industry for programming languages, and it has a ton of support. So you can imagine now, because right now there's pretty much, if you want to build a runtime in WASM, it's like you're using Rust or like JS most likely, and like yes, you can do other things. Like there's work for Go. There's like other things, but it's more convoluted.
Okay.
Versus with the PVM now, you'll be able to use a lot more programming languages. You can be building like runtimes for Jam.
Yeah.
In basically whatever language you want.
So LLVM is a virtual machine running on RISC-V already?
It's a compiler.
Okay.
So yeah, that was we were going in the weeds on that part. But it's basically a nice tool that we can use to make the PVM way general and supported by a ton of programming languages. Because we built like the PVM, it is like, yeah, it's based on RISC-V, but it's its own virtual machine.
Sure.
So instead of for every language having to build a compiler to PVM and like build it all out,
yeah,
we can use this tool to just inherit the whole community that already exists in RISC-V and all the tools that come with that.
Okay, so let's talk, I guess, timelines and the specifics of the prize a bit.
Okay, yeah.
Let's start with the specifics of the prize. So for this first milestone, what's at stake? How much is available?
There's a couple buckets.
Okay.
And I think...
And there's a bunch of languages in each bucket.
Yes. And per bucket, I believe it's 100,000 DOT.
Okay.
I might be remembering wrong, but it's a nice chunk of change per bucket.
Which bucket is going?
Bucket B,
okay.
I believe. Yeah.
And you're bumping shoulders with what other languages?
From the last I looked, the other teams that are in our bucket are, I believe, all Go. Like, there's like 5 Go teams.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for whatever reason.
It's go time.
It's go time. Exactly. So yeah, we really gotta do our part to be diligent here, which is also good. It's like healthy it's like competition and collaborativeness.
In a situation where there's 4 or 5 Go implementations in a single language, I think only a few are going to get rewarded.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a situation where every team makes the milestone, maybe they would give it to everyone.
Okay.
It would just, because I know if multiple teams within the same bucket all hit the milestone, it'll be like partitioned amongst the teams.
Sure.
Like as long as they pass all, like they get approved and everything, and it's like they did everything right, and it's like good quality code and all of this. But I mean, if like 7 teams in Go are like, okay, we did this, I imagine they won't give it to everyone. Like maybe they would. I mean, I guess if that happens, awesome. But we'll see if everyone makes it to the end with like the same quality.
Yeah, totally. So team that reaches first milestone with quality, passes all the tests, they're looking at, one or a couple $100,000 worth of DOT as a reward.
Yeah.
Just to reach the first milestone.
Yeah.
And is there a due date on that?
No, not right now.
Okay.
The timeline of it is interesting because there's kind of a couple things happening at once. Like I don't have insights into the W3F and their planning for timelines and stuff, but I can give you like how I'm approaching it, like for like my team's development and how we're viewing it.
Yeah.
Like it's looking like there's going to be a meetup around DevCon and like Sub-Zero where we're trying to bring Jam teams together.
Mid-November?
Yeah, mid-November. And I think the goal we're shooting for is to try and have like the first milestone completed. Like that seems to be what's being discussed. So it's a very soft.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll see how that
you don't want to show up without the first milestone.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But that's like, my understanding is that's the North Star that we're shooting for. But the idea for that is less like this is a deadline, and it's more we want to make sure that the people that are there have enough that we can like work together and collaborate. So for example, like if a team showed up and didn't have like one certain system built, I'm sure that's fine. It's just like because it's not a deadline. That's not like it's we're there to collaborate. So it's like they can ask questions. They can, maybe it's like team, like we can just discuss things and problem solve and like do conformance testing with our clients. That's a very soft, just like kind of internal, not even a deadline, but like a thing we're striving for. The other side of things is there's an interesting play in Jam development like at least for our team, I can't speak to how other teams are doing it, to where on one hand, we're working on building out based on the gray paper. It's like it defines what we need to build. We're doing our best to build it.
Sure.
And then also the like Parity is releasing like test vectors to test specific components of Jam.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of tackling it from two different points. There's like our own building of it, and then they release the text vectors and we build out the systems to pass the test vectors.
I see.
So like, for example, right, I believe the first one they released was Safrol, like the block production algorithm.
Right.
And so it's, even though we haven't built out our whole client yet, we fully have Safrol working in it. Like we passed those tests. And so now we're building out other components of the system, and we kind of need to like glue them all together.
Cool.
So it's like kind of this ad hoc passing of the test vectors and then plugging them into like our overall system that we're trying to build based on the gray paper.
So cool. Okay, so here's shaping up to the first milestone. What's the reward for the second milestone?
I believe it's uniform. Like I think
it's 100,000 every time or something it, possibly.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
But probably fewer and fewer teams making it through, so the individual rewards go up.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I think at first there was a notion that, I mean, because it was a good amount of money, right? Like when they announced the prize, it was like, whoa.
I know,
okay.
I know. Yeah.
But then I remember we were talking to someone from the Web3 Foundation, and they were saying like, I think people are like a little overreacting to the like not the total amount of money, but like on a per team basis, like it'll be less in practice than like, it's not like I'm going to build it and get 50 million USD and like just get rich.
Yeah.
But at first I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be a rich man. I'm going to go build it. And it's everyone's like, we're quitting our jobs. So we're just building it ourselves. And, but still, it is a lot of money.
It kind of seems like the teams that come out the other side will walk away with several million in DOT.
That I would think so. I would think so.
Pretty decent.
I totally no, it is quite nice.
For building the cutting edge of blockchain with the best thinkers in the world.
No, exactly.
It's not terrible.
Exactly.
Wicked.
No, it's quite nice.
How about this jam toaster at the Polkadot Palace? Are you ready to fly to Lisbon when it's ready and check it out under the pool?
Oh my gosh, I'm quite excited for this.
You want to tell us a bit about what the jam toaster is from your point of view?
So, I mean, truth be told, I don't know that much about it. Yeah. I know that it's a ginormous computer. Yeah. That they have this whole network set up. They have a building, and they're just putting a bunch of computers in there. Yeah. And they're just going to run
a blockchain brain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, for us, like, again, like we've been building in Polkadot for a while. Like this is all stuff that we do on like our own hardware. Like we have our own DevOps teams and we have to man it. Like we were doing all our own DevOps for years. And it's like, and I'm sure we'll still do this for Jam, but I mean, like the cost of it, it's expensive. It's like, it takes time to maintain and build out. Yeah. Like it makes our job so much nicer to just be able to be welcomed into the toaster. Yeah. Get plopped into the toaster and just get access to the hardware and the systems and all the tests and just everything that whole infrastructure is really nice from our point of view. That's something I'm quite happy about.
So what we've heard Gav say on this show and also on our open dev call that we have, basically, I guess this is, some playboy in the 1950s or something built this, this party house.
I heard this.
Yeah. And it's being converted to like a blockchain monastery, basically. Yeah. Right.
And that's the only reason they can even like support like power wise, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, because they had like all the party lights and everything. Yeah. Which is, it's going to be pretty cool.
I mean, how perfect is that?
It's epic, man. Yeah. It's totally epic. But just to be clear, because I've seen some confusion, people sometimes confuse this jam toaster with the actual hardware that will run the network. But this is not the decentralized network.
No,
this is a test. This is a testing place.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. This is something that is just for us to like, not us as in the whole development community. Yeah. To be able to test things well at scale before going into production and testing new features, not just on a little couple node network that I set up like at home or something. Yeah. We can build it in like a real life, like simulated environment, which just like, one, it's nice for us, but it's quite nice for the network in terms of improving security. It's just like, nobody wants hacks or bugs or anything, you know,
Sure,
like,
sure.
but, and then this just makes our job a lot easier, which hopefully makes just the overall experience nicer, less bugs, and just like things will work nicer once they reach the users.
I'll tell you, I was, you know, I went to some side events of different ecosystems while I was in Bali. And like, there's this one ecosystem, and I see the CEO on stage. He's like, we're the only blockchain where you can run AI directly on the blockchain. And I was like, that's wild. Like, how is this possible? You want to know how they achieve this? Every node is basically a data center.
Oh yeah. There you go.
So there you go, right? But obviously, I mean, this is a bunch of problems, and this is not what we're trying to build here at Polkadot. But I'm wondering if it kind of sounds like we could still achieve the same sort of action on this jam-based network.
Oh, totally. It's if you want to put your data centers and connect them to each other and put it as a jam service, by all means, you know, like, be my guest. No, I really do think that it's going to unlock a lot of different possibilities for what can be built. And so if we're talking about like an actual internet computer, it goes beyond. And I think this is the, like, I can't speak for anyone, but I imagine this is the idea that Polkadot does a lot, but it doesn't give the full range of potentials for what can be built. Same with Ethereum. It's like, smart contracts are great and you can do a lot within a smart contract, but you're confined to a smart contract. And so I think that Jam can unlock, it'll do both those things and also whatever is in between. I think it'll go a long ways into unlocking like that actual like vision of an internet computer and just being able to do more unique and interesting things within the context of a blockchain.
Yeah. Look, when you're busy building Jam, you're also building the alternative client or implementation of the current Polkadot network. The other thing you do is Polkadot Guild.
Oh, yeah.
It's called?
Oh, yes, yes.
You want to tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah? So Polkadot's not the only system we work in. So we have core protocol teams for multiple ecosystems. Like we have an Ethereum consensus layer client. We have a Filecoin client, Polkadot client. We do a lot of research and development in a bunch of different spaces. So in issue that we have is a little bit of like fragmented knowledge in the company. It's like, doesn't mean we have 3 teams building core client software, but they don't interact much. It's like, and so maybe our Ethereum team has solved a consensus like problem that we're interacting with, or like they've thought through similar solutions. Like maybe they were having memory problems, so we can talk with them about how they managed it. And like, there's not as much cross collaboration between teams within our company. And so we developed this idea of guilds, which are basically just meeting groups within the company to bring people together to talk about whatever the topic of the guild is. So we have like a cryptography guild. And so people will put on presentations and discuss anything cryptography, and anyone from the company that is interested in cryptography can go. And so I run the Polkadot Guild. It's just a group that meets every other week, and some days it's just a couple people from all different parts of the company asking questions, talking, just like catching up. We can just be like having coffee and talking about what's been going on in the ecosystem.
Sure.
Sometimes, like, some of my favorites are when we get the Ethereum team in there, like some people from the Ethereum team, and we'll go back and forth on different ideas and research going on and like these types of things.
Yeah, yeah.
And just like the cross-team dialogue is quite nice. But then it's, as you know, that we also try to bring in guests to expose ourselves to the ecosystem and bring a little bit of the ecosystem into the company.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing for us because we get to have people like you and like other people in the ecosystem, like that we get to actually meet and interact with and get to meet them as people and just build our relationship with these people and hopefully the community too. Like I hope the goal is that it's a nice experience when people come in and it's like we ask them questions and it's nice and we hang out and it's like, oh yeah, they're nice people over there. They're doing interesting stuff. Like
it was super nice. You had me in like a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago or something like that. Yeah. And the vibes were high.
I'm glad.
I was like, yeah, I had no idea what to expect. And then it was so enjoyable. I left pretty uplifted.
We mean it to be a very like low, it's not like, you're not presenting at a conference or something.
Right,
you know?
right.
It's not like come in and you have your agenda and you have to give a slideshow. It's like, you just kind of want to talk and hang out, get to know people, ask questions.
It's cool. You ever thought about opening it up? I mean,
yeah,
it's pretty valuable.
Yeah, me and my buddy John, who used to run the guild with me, we've spent like many hours just like sitting over, like, because we used to live near each other, and so we'd meet up for beers and like plan like stuff for the guild and like where we want to go. I think we've done one public event before. I know it would be cool to open up and just try and. I know I should.
No, I'm just glad that you don't have to.
No. Well, it's spurred because that is something we've thought about before, like trying to take these internal things and make them public, and while also maintaining the vibe of it still. Like if we still want it to be relaxed and like entertaining, but still like informative. Like, cause sometimes it's like we'll email someone and it's like. People are, as you know, people are busy, and it's like we don't want to be like a thing to stress over, or like we don't want it to be another big thing that you have to do.
Yeah.
And so like, well, we want to maintain that for our guests if we were to open it up, unless we get so big that it's like no, like now everyone's just making time to
yeah. Well, it's like, it has to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad you made time to come on this show and to share this super unique perspective of implementing Jam.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. It's been great. I've loved it.
We wish you all the best going forward, and wishing many dot upon you and an amazing goal implementation.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for all your hard work.
Dude, thank you.